train them to fight. We want them to understand that people are going to attack upon us. We are going to defend our position. We will try to get blocks, but we are going to be ready for the fight. Just because you get to hit doesn't mean you get to score. I mean, we want our attackers to be terminal. And if you're not terminal, we want to have a certain prowess of being able to dig you out. I think what's important here is the area of which we can cover. I mean, we don't want to be excitable. We want to be able to have range. And for me, range is the obsession. So we just want to be able to cover a lot of distance. And if you hit hard, we're going to be in the spots where you hit hard. And if you hit slow or tip, we want to make sure we have good weight in order to be able to run those things down. All right, so starting posture here. So starting posture is important for me because it's basically how you're going to begin it. And you know, this is going to have a little bit of difference depending on what your defense is going to be. So if your defensive base is close, then your players might be in a position where they need to retreat a little bit more. If your defensive base is back, they might need to run forward a little bit more. Maybe your defensive base has them around the spots where balls get hit, so they'll have to do less movement. But in general, this is a side view for starting posture and a front view. And you can see the weight's forward. So her chest is up, her elbows are bent, her back heel is off the ground. She's ready to kind of push herself forward or reach herself back. But she's pressed pretty aggressively. And so she wants to have her weight forward. This is not the hardest thing to ask for in terms of starting posture. What's extremely difficult is when you start having them move around, when you ask athletes to cover space, or especially when you ask athletes to take on opponent attackers, interesting dynamics happen. You'll see them rock their hips back. You'll see them go into more neutral weight or start in neutral weight and then rock their hips back to throw themselves forward. I like my defenders pressed, and I like really instilling the bravado that we're going to be pressed at our attackers, looking to take them on. Presented defender is basically when we want to cover our ground and really work to have a little bit more range here. So one of the things about the previous slide, I'm just going to go back, is she looks like she's really good to go forward and backwards. You know, she doesn't really look like, if she had to go sideways right now, she had to change what her body looks like. Right now, she's really built to go forward and back. You see her hips aren't necessarily, her chest isn't super low, so her hips aren't totally behind her. They're kind of up below her. But this is not so much of an aggressive stance where she has to rise those things up. She's close to where she wants to be. All right, so presented defender. And you see the side view here. She's a little bit more, her feet are apart, and she still has a pretty good press. I mean, her elbows are still bent, her chest is up. You see her shoulders are a little bit more risen above her hips, and her hips are kind of below her feet, and her head's kind of below her shoulders there. So in the front view, you can see she's still kind of, she's a lot more aggressively able to take on balls laterally. So she can go sideways much easier in this stance. If she had to go forward, she could, as long as she had good weight, she could lean to fall forward. But if her weight was neutral here, then it would take her a little time to kind of motion forward. Now, another movement that we might have to do here is also retreating. I mean, you have to move backwards and forwards. So how can we use our bodies, and what should we do in terms of retreating? And I have a couple methods that I use. I don't have a video on it, but I think some of the best retreaters are NFL defensive backs. I mean, they're covering receivers who are sprinter-like. These guys are fast, they can cut quick. And so in order to move backwards, look at some cues from them. These are kind of a few that I've developed. One is the fact that you see on the left, a player is going to kind of what I call get skinny. And the other one is if she has to backpedal, I let her backpedal. I mean, if you have some time that you can actually be in a defensive pose, not the one to the left, then might as well utilize that. Sometimes we don't have time and you have to clear distance. So if you don't have time and you have to clear distance back, you see her pumping her elbows and kind of working herself back here.